came about because it was brought to my attention. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming into this issue, much to my own shame. And that came about because of some very committed people who we owe our deepest respect to in this community, our volunteer firefighters. The questions that arose regarding this as I started to get deeper and deeper into it, the big question that arose is, why are we doing this? Who identified the need? Where did that need come from? Suddenly, after the 2007 study, we then had the 2013 study affirming that study that says we're going to go ahead with closing 2 of our fire halls. Ontario Street, Fire Hall number 1, and of course Welcome, Fire Hall number 2. We're going to consolidate these fire halls, according to these studies, into one joint facility with our police force. Nowhere have I been able to find where it says, emphatically, that fire departments and police departments have to live in the same house. That's maybe done in other communities, maybe done in bigger communities, maybe done elsewhere, I don't know. But whether or not it should be done here, whether it is necessary to do it here, is just one of those questions that keep coming up. As I read through the studies, and the studies that I read through are extensive, including the 2007 study, and of course the 2013 study. If I were to hold those studies up here in a room with 100 people and say, who's read these studies? I don't think 2 hands would go up. I don't think, there's one there. You read the study?
I read it.
Well, that's Gord. Gord, yes, Gord and Terry would have read the study. Would have read the study. And okay, so we got 4 hands in this room, although 5 hands in this room, 1 with a particular interest, who have read the studies. Let me ask you this, those 4 people, what did you make of the studies? Garbage. Gentlemen?
It seems to me that 2007 plan was quite a bit different in their aims than the 2013.
And yet, some of the aims in the 2000 study are carried over into the 2013 study, except there are contradictions. There are things in the 2013 study that attempt to reinforce the 2007 study, such as the claim that all of our old folks' homes, all of our long-term care facilities are on the east side of the river, except for one. Except for one. There is one long-term care facility on the west side of the river. That's at the very foot of Victoria Street. It's called Villa Adelia. That's my friend Bill's house. It's never been a long-term care facility. It never was, it never will be. And yet, as far as the flaws in these studies are concerned, I'm only picking out one. And I can pick out, going through these studies, for the last 2 weeks, I haven't seen my kitchen table for 2 weeks, going through these studies, contradictions, claims, some of the outrageous, some things I will not hesitate to say are simple outright lies. There are lies of omission, there are lies of commission. Both figure prominently in these studies. If we act on these studies, I believe we're going down a path, an inexorable path, that mirrors what happened with the police thing. There was this plan to bring in the OPP under the carrot of we're all going to save money. It's going to save money. Well, what we found out later, having stopped the OPP, there are now, I don't know how many communities in Ontario that are saying, we wish we hadn't gone with the OPP. I don't want us in this town to be the people who stand back and say, I wish we hadn't done this. And yet, this is like a runaway train. This thing has gone so far, and under the direction of so many people who know, in my opinion, so little, that it's going to be very, very difficult to stop. So we have 2 thrusts for this meeting. The 2 thrusts are really quite simple. Number 1, there's a petition over there. The petition, which you can read in its wording, it's up there, the blue petition over there, and it sits there on that desk where my daughter is. The petition implores council to stop, to just stop doing this. Do not advance any more motions regarding appropriating money to build this station. Stop it now. Number 2, hold an open public house. We, this town, has open public houses for everything. Remember the open public house for the addition they wanted to put onto Town Hall, $12 million? Remember that one? We had an open public house for that. And it was through that open public house that enough people signed little pieces of paper with one word, don't, that it didn't happen. We had an open public house in council chambers for our failed branding initiative. Remember that one?
Still going on.
But all of a sudden this huge thing that involves vast amounts of money, public safety, God knows what else. We're not going to have an open public house. I was told when I asked at council 2 weeks ago whether an open public house had been held, and bear this in mind for clarity, an open public house is not a town hall meeting. A town hall meeting is where you bring eggs and tomatoes and you get all those people up there and you do this stuff that you shouldn't do. Okay, that's a town hall meeting. They're free-for-alls. An open public house is where you get to ask questions of the people who designed these reports, who put forward this plan, and you should get answers because you're entitled to it. But on this issue, we're not having an open public house. And when I asked Dave Turk, the Protection of Persons and Property Committee Chair at Council 2 weeks ago, when I said, Dave, did we have an open public house on this? Did we? Did we gather the people of Port Hope? Dave Turk said, I think we did. And I said, and I'm paraphrasing, and I said to Mr. Turk, I said, where and when was it held? Well, I can't really remember. But I remember that there was officials there. 2 days later, after 2 emails to Mr. Turk asking for a clarification, he answered me. And he answered me very forthrightly, and I appreciate that. What Mr. Turk said was, I stand to be corrected. There was something of a meeting, something of a gathering. Nowhere in the body of his email did he use the words open public open public house. He didn't use that. He sort of skirted around it. And it took 2 days for it to get back to me. I'm glad he got back to me, because as I look out here, remember this as well. I invited every senior official of this town personally to this meeting, and every elected official. How many do you see here? Thusly are we being listened to. This is my thrust on this whole thing. So, we have a microphone at the back of the hall, but I don't think we're going to need it tonight. These are my opening remarks. I had some prepared, I just forgot to bring them. But I think I've covered it, and I now open the floor to you for your first chance, your first real chance, I believe, to actually get to speak on this. Remember our 2 points. We want that petition signed so I can take it before council in a delegation, and we want an open public house. Okay, so anybody who cares to ask any questions, if I can answer, I'll be more than happy to, from all the reading I've done over the last couple of weeks. Anybody?
I just want to know one thing. I heard this, I don't know how true it is, I guess it's pretty true though, that the fire department will not respond unless it's life-threatening. That means if you have a stroke or a heart attack. Now if you fell when it broke your rib and went through your lung, how do they know that it's not life-threatening?
I'm going to defer that question to somebody who might know.
My name is Bob Cranley, and I'll just clarify, I'm not speaking on behalf of our department as a volunteer. I'll speak on behalf of the fire department, but how that works is with an agreement with Northumberland County Paramedic Service. If the call is of a cardiac arrest or where the patient is believed to be dead or in a traffic accident, we will respond immediately when the ambulance gets dispatched. Anything else is the ambulance must be delayed greater than 10 minutes. And if they're going to be longer than 10 minutes getting to you for any other life-threatening problem, then the fire department will be asked to attend.
Because there was a farm up the road from me where a guy lets people ride horses and stuff. He charges them like for the trail ride. The girl fell off the horse last summer. Got hurt pretty bad. I live about probably a mile from the fire department. They phoned the 911. No fire department responded. So they phoned the paramedic up the road. And name is Wright, Jeff Wright, he's a paramedic out of Peterborough. He came down and attended the girl to the ambulance came. Now that girl could have died. You were only, well, not you, the fire department was only a mile away. And this, like, a lot of people don't know this. This has just been brought on lately. Nobody knows that if you had fell and broke your femur, or broke, like you say, put a lung through, or a rip through your lung, who's to know that you're not going to die?
The only way I can answer that is the person that you've called is an ambulance dispatcher. The questions that they ask, they determine on local response based on how you answer the questions, and they try to set it forward.
How far from the welcome station do you live, or Pat?
I live about, probably 5 kilometers, but I'm closer to the one in Garden Hill.
You are.
Yeah.
So if you're up there in Garden Hill, because when I got involved with this, I thought this was a Ward 1 issue, because I live in Ward 1. I live up on Sullivan Street. I live in a part of town full of old wooden houses. And what worried me was if we start moving these fire stations around, fixing something that ain't broke, if we start doing this, all those old wooden properties like the one I live in might become vulnerable. If we start paying attention to the new homes out in the Aon subdivision and way up that way in the northwest corner, Ward 1, I'm thinking, wait a minute, they all fall under modern fire codes. They've all got built-in smoke detectors and poured concrete basements. You're leaving the most vulnerable downtown in Port Hope more vulnerable. Then it hit me as well with what's going on up in Ward 2. If Welcome is closed, there are people who live, for instance, on Highway 28, just off 28, a straight shot from Fire Station 1, and a really good insurance rate applies. If we start moving these things around, those insurance rates are going to go up. I don't know by how much. If there's anyone here from the insurance industry, maybe we could get some sort of percentage basis on that. But in the meantime, if those insurance rates go up, isn't that a tax? Doesn't that qualify as just another tax that has been imposed by the moving around of our fire halls?
Well, John Cullen, he phoned the fire department. He lives on 28 Highway. And he's protected by the Welcome Fire Hall. And he told him that the closed Welcome Fire Hall, his insurance is going to go up considerably. I don't know how much. That's what they told me.
They actually said consider it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else who lives in Ward 2 have any other thoughts on this, like the insurance aspect of this? Has anybody been informed of, because in all the reading I've done in the studies, the word insurance doesn't show up. It just doesn't show up. It's as if it's, something for you to worry about, not them. And secondly, when we get into the numbers of all of this, the amount of money we're going to spend to do this, to do something that, in my opinion, is thoroughly unnecessary, going to upset insurance rates, going to increase vulnerability of people out there, in Ward 2 especially, to say nothing of downtown properties. Okay, there are other elements of this too that come in. When the fire hall was built in 1970, or Station 1, which I have toured, I looked at that place, I walked around it. I wish I could find something wrong with it. I was under the auspice of fire people showing me how things work. The contradictions that show up in the studies about how this place has to be moved simply don't add up to me. But I looked at that fire hall, and then something else came out. I started talking to other people, making phone calls around town, including to insurance agents and people who have been in this town a lot longer than I have. And what did I find out? I found out that prior to 1970, a road allowance was conceived, designed perhaps, that would go from that fire hall number 1 on Ontario Street, right down Croft Street, across to Caroline Street, and across the river, okay? Which would give instant access across the river from Fire Hall 1. Right now, for instance, if the street at the top of town is any of the routes are broken, blocked, the fire trucks can't get to the west end of town, or it's more difficult. They only have Walton Street, and they only have, what's the street at the top? Jocelyn. So if Jocelyn's blocked, they got to go to Walton, okay? So a third route was planned, envisioned, imagined. All we needed was the infrastructure of a bridge, which we need anyway, because Our temporary bridge has been there for 30 years now. So we need another bridge across there. And that would have accommodated the fire trucks going across and getting themselves to emergency areas in the west end of Port Hope. It was just shelved. Nobody looked at it. If money is to be spent, I would think the money would be spent on facilitating better access to Fire Hall number 1, not moving it somewhere. Furthermore, with regards to those long-term facilities, homes, I don't know if anybody has recently seen what's going on over at Ward Street and Roseglen. The construction is huge. That's going to be something of a long-term care facility, and 220 beds are going up in the hospital area. Okay, that plan has been approved as well. So by moving those fire halls, are we not just abandoning?
Dan, I'm Tim Haynes, we talked to.
Oh, hi Tim, how are you?
It's 220 houses, not
Yeah.
220 beds.
Oh, I see, okay. But nonetheless, that's a sizable development,
It's a
Jim.
subdivision planned by Hal LeBlanc, it's been approved, and he will be starting construction this year. In one of the studies, they talk about all of the growth coming on the west side of Port Hope, where all of their subdivision plans have been approved. It never once mentioned Al's plan, which is already on the books. Not talking about subdivisions that might be built in the future, but he is actually building it. It's 200, I think it's 220 units, and it'll be on the extension of Cross Street east to Rose Lane Road.
So even in the 2013 study, the most recent one,
That's right,
that was not mentioned.
not mentioned.
How could, well,
And the bridge that or the plan, Cross Street by the old Department of Highways, down through there, down through the Racine property, across the river to hook up with Highland Drive. That bridge was, the original concept design was done in 1972 by Todd and Cindy Baker.
which would
I
be,
know that because I used to be the chief or the vice president of finance for Todd and Cindy Baker.
and that's only 2 years after the construction of Fire Hall number 1, which is
That's right.
1970.
That's right,
So this had all been planned.
that's right.
And somehow or other, through successive governments, we simply put it all on the shelf.
And when I questioned the mayor about that, she said that project is still on the books. I don't know what that means, but that's what she told me.
I concur with you that I don't know what it means either, but what I really don't know what means is how was this thing conceived, dropped, left alone? How was it ignored in the 2013 report?
Because the people that wrote the study and the people that have been in charge of this don't live here.
I think that's a pretty, that's what I call an umbrella answer, and it's a good one.
I,
Thank you, Sam.
for those people who don't know who I am, I was born and raised here. There's a little store downtown called Hank's Variety. Hank was my father. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I'm on the audit committee of the town. I'm the president of the Port Hope District Healthcare Foundation. I'm the architect of the walk-in clinic. I'm just saying those things because I am community involved. And in all my life, I have stayed low-key, don't want to get involved in politics. This thing has pushed me over the edge. I read those reports. It is so full. The reports are so full of flaw. You asked earlier what I thought or what we thought of the report. The second one that I read was a report that was written with a conclusion already made and all the points lined up to come to that conclusion. Some of the things in there are just absolutely stupid. But from my point of view is that over the last few years we've got a brand new shiny water treatment plant, we've got a brand new shiny sewage treatment plant, we've got a brand new shiny works department, we've got so what else do we need that's brand new and shiny? It seems to me to be what it is. But getting back to the concept of investing money, spending our money, our tax money, to help the people of this town, it seems to me to have a little vision that 1972 plan to take Cross Street and hook it up with Highland Drive. Just think about it. You hook the people up on the east side of the river to the high school, to Dr. Hawkins now, the junior high school. You hook them up to Jack Berger Arena, which I guess we're getting some new and shiny stuff there too. So, but think about the value that would be in that project as opposed to a joint fire, whatever they call it, and if they can do that thing for what the price tag of $900,000, I'll eat it, every bit of it.
And
First of all,
you are on the audit committee.
And I'm on the audit committee. I've been involved in the engineering industry because in consulting and as a vice president of finance for an engineering company. I know what the fee structures are. They just announced the architect's fee structures. Its fee is $235,000 to design that. Typically, an architect's fee will be somewhere between 5 and 7% of the estimated construction costs. That would put the construction costs of the building to be somewhere between 3.5 and 4.4 million. And they're talking about 900,000. Come on.
No, they're talking about both the police and the fire together.
Okay, so, yeah, okay.
The fire
so,
is
all right,
900.
all right, so that would mean that the police side of it would be something like 2.7 million.
Probably, yeah, that or more, yeah.
Terry, would you mind telling people who you are?
I'm sorry, Terry Hickey, I'm with the Port Hope Ratepayers Association. Obviously, we're involved too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everybody's involved.
Just to let people know here too, we have actually written to Councillor Chirk as head of protections property with a formal position statement outlining exactly what you're espousing here, that they cease and desist from continuing their plans. That's number one. And number two, when it comes time to hire a new fire chief, that they do so with a reasoned, rational, professional peer evaluation group rather than just a few people down at Town Hall. So that we get a chief that is a chief, not an administrator. And I think that's important to the people whom we value, which are the 68 volunteers that we have.
And this was the process that was followed recently in Coburg, selecting a chief. They got area chiefs together who know about fire prevention, and they got together and they were the ones who selected who the next chief should be.
And it's working well for them. Does that chief live in Coburg? Does he reside there?
No, it doesn't. I don't know. No.
No?
Okay, apparently not.
I'm not so sure how important that is, because when you attach that word administrative to any of these positions, we wind up with people doing their jobs by BlackBerry from 150 miles away.
And this has been the problem with the previous
And that-
chief, we understand.
That's why they need to change.
They need someone who has experience in the field as well as administration.
So hands-on is better than
Yep.
remote control.
Yes.
Gordon?
Yeah, I keep harking back to the good old days. For those of you that don't know me, I was born on Ward Street in that old facility just about 75 years ago, and I'm rather outspoken. Can you hear me all right now?
Yeah.
Good. I have read that 2013 study, and I find it to be the same thing as when I read the Northumberland police study, which I fought vociferously against. They were prepared, and Dan said it, from a preconceived set of rules and regulations, shall we call
I didn't say it, Tim did.
it. Yeah. Well, I agree with Tim when we were talking just before you started the meeting as well. These reports that they get these consultants to do, the very first process that the consultants do is they sit down with the principals, which would be some of the elected representatives and administrative staff. And they get a sense of what those people are thinking. And then they write a report that agrees with it. That's what happened with the Northumberland police study that was going to have OPP in charge of all of Northumberland. The province would have loved it. We wouldn't, because we had to pay for it. And the province is looking to have municipalities accept Ontario Provincial Police for the plain and simple reason that they can download the cost to the local taxpayer and get it out of their budget. That's the reason for it. This particular study, as far as the fire department is concerned, ignored many things, and I have found contradictions in it. They say, for
The
instance...
2013 study work, you found
2013
contradictions.
study, yes. They say that fire station number 1 is not acceptable for training. So they're putting training out of Canada. So that ignores that. I mean, that just totally ignores that. But that's one of their primary reasons for wanting to get rid of fire station 1. Welcome, same thing. They also say with Welcome that it's in a floodplain. Well, as a former Secretary Treasurer of Conservation Authority, floodplains are based on a 100-year flood, which we've never seen in the 75 years I've been here. It is restricted because of culvert size or bridge size, and that's what causes the 100-year flood, because if you try to put a big volume of water through a small hole, it doesn't happen. It's like a dam, and so it spreads out behind it. And I'm not sure that that's the case out of Welcome, but it might very well be. But basically, they have taken a premise that is a very narrow approach to this subject. And I have taken lately to calling them 10%ers, because they look at the 10% that's right in front of their eyes. But if you think back to anything that you were involved with in the past, and I think Tim will agree with me on this, if you don't look at everything out from your peripheral vision all the way into the center, you're guaranteed a failure.
In defense of our councillors, Gord, let me say this. I read both those studies in detail. We pay these people less than minimum wage. We don't pay them to wade through this kind of stuff. You got to be a Philadelphia lawyer to pick out the flaws that you picked out, that Tim's picked out, that I've picked out. We don't pay these people enough to do this. They just look at it, they see consultants' names, they rubber stamp it, away it goes to committee, and we're done.
There's one problem with that. They have adopted many years ago a code of conduct for council, and it applies to the senior administrative staff as well. And it has been adapted over the years and adjusted over the years, but basically what it says is that they will become knowledgeable, that they will be open and forthright, that they will be accountable and responsible, and a few other nice fancy catchphrases. But basically, what they go for a consultant for is when it goes wrong, which it most invariably will, they can say it's a consultant's fault, not ours. Well, I'm sorry. We elect them and we appoint administrators to do our business, not their business and not somebody else's business.
We also rather hope that they would abide by their own bylaws, such as 56/2011, which clearly states that on matters of importance such as this, there will be an open public meeting.
Yeah.
And there has not been. And this is one of the thrusts of why we're here tonight. If we have to hang around in a low-ceiling little room and talk about this, if we can't get questions and answers done down at council, there's something wrong with the entire process. This place, this room, where we are now, this is the heart of democracy in Port Hope. When I moved here, it was a few blocks away. That was the heart of democracy, and you went there to celebrate democracy and get your questions answered. We can't do that anymore. What's happened? Why don't they peel back the curtain, let a little light in, and tell us what's going on, how this actually started? I cannot find in any of the studies the need. Who identified the need? Does anybody who's read these studies know where the need came from? Was there, as my friend Mr. Polutnik alluded to today, Mr. Polutnik said, and I can't disagree, he said, did I miss it? Was there a 10,000 signature petition demanding that we move our fire halls? And I missed it? How come I didn't see it? How come I didn't sign it? Who identified this need? Where did it come from? Who dreamed this up? And I think that's what you were saying, was it, Robert? Yeah. And Robert can say it, but I would hope, Robert, you'll read a paragraph or two.
I
didn't bring it with me, but I think it's with your notes at home.
Oh, my notes at home. I probably have it on my computer, yes.
I'm Sandy Holmes, I'm a long time. I almost qualify, I'm married to a guy that was born here, and I've been here 40 years, so I'm almost qualified.
So you're almost on the
I'm
seniority
almost,
list.
yeah, I'm almost there.
That's good.
But I have my youngest son, Joe, is a volunteer fire department with Ward 2. He's out there. He lived with me for a lot of years when he was doing that, and he responded to the 401. And a lot. And this winter, a very lot. What happens if those trucks are out there on the 401 and there's a fire in Ward 1? And we've only got one home.
Do we have overlap? Do we have sufficient overlap?
Will they
Redundancy.
combine everything? I'm sorry,
That's okay, put me on the spot.
Yeah, I put you on the spot, but like,
Okay, my name is Glenn Case. I'm the District Chief, Station 1 here at Port Hope. And I'm here to provide you with information about what's going on in the fire department. The study, in terms of overlap, what the plan is to consolidate 2 stations into 1. Currently we have 48 firefighters between the 2 stations that would be consolidated into 1 station. We currently have 8 pieces of apparatus between the 2 stations that will come down to 6, because that will fit into the new station that's being proposed. What they've been talking about is this 2007 study that was prepared to provide a vision for the future of the fire department and where should we be going over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So it looked at a variety of things. It looked at apparatus, which is, and I have a comment on that for you, Tim, in just a minute. It looked at breathing apparatus. It looked at the stations, the locations, what they've got for fixtures, the kind of arrangement of people that you should have, the chain of command, which is one of the things that, as an officer, I must respect in terms of chain of command that goes up from me, etc. So that's what this was built on, and so for the vision for the future for Port Hope was locked up in this document, and it talked about you have a 1982 aerial platform that needs to be replaced because you have a main street, you have industry. So that's why we got a big new red shiny truck, all right, to replace the 1982. And we've been in the process of upgrading our fleet because we don't need a big red fence, or we don't need a shiny new sewage treatment plant, water treatment plant, joint operations center, or a fire hall. We need a big shiny red truck. We work with a truck. That's what our job is. And it can park quite well in Station 1 and Station 2 and Station 3. And that was the plan, was to get these consistent, organized stations so that they were replicas of each other in terms of the kind of apparatus they have. So that we have a big brand new rescue pumper that's in Station 1. We have a brand new rescue pumper that's in Station 2. There was a plan to buy one for Station 3 so that we had good coverage, because we've got a lot of area that we have to cover within Port Hope. A combination of both urban, which is what we're having here right now with hydrants, and the rural, which we have to get water. So we need tankers, we need dry hydrants, ponds, streams, lakes, whatever, in order to fight fires. So we needed a set of 3 brand new rescue pumpers. Well, what's happened now is through this consolidation, we will save $500,000. It's a little over exaggerated, I think, more than what you think, exaggeration, thank you. But anyway, save $500,000. If we don't buy that, then we can put that towards the station. Really, the station's quite fine. What we need is the new red shiny trucks, because that's what we deal with. In terms of, the other operations, and here comes more help. That's okay. So really, the station works quite fine for us. Should give you a little bit of a history. The station was built back in 1970. In 1970, we had things called duty drivers, which meant that there was always someone in the fire station from 7 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning that would respond with a truck. And that's a history that goes back, and Bob can quote the years, a long, long time. Because downtown, when the fire hall was beside the river, they lived in the apartments up above so that they could respond with the truck or with the horses or whatever. It goes back that far. So that station was designed with 2 apartments in it that the families actually lived in. And the father or the older person would respond and get in the truck and take it to the fire. So as a cost-saving measure, the duty driver was scrapped. And so therefore, there's 2 apartments that still are adjoining to that building itself, which affords us the opportunity to provide separate washrooms for the women on our fire department as well as the men. They've converted them over into offices and an administration area. They've put in a big natural gas power supply, so when most of you lost your power back in December, we didn't. The lights were on in the fire hall. We were able to get the doors up and down. We had heat, the area for refuge, and our Christmas lights were still on too, which was embarrassing. But that's what they saw as that station needing, so that in an emergency, it's fully functional. They put a heating system in it, air conditioning. Before everything was electric heat, but now we have natural gas. So the station was upgraded. And now what we're doing is basically abandoning that and moving. In my dissertation, or the letter that I wrote to respond to this, I brought that up in terms of when they picked that station back in the late 1960s and built it, they had a vision for the future, that where's a good spot to be located? And it's right there on Ontario Street. It's almost like central to everything that's going on in the municipality. We have good response times. It's a good location to get to the 401, to get downtown, to get over to the Highland Drive area, to get up in the Centennial, et cetera, et cetera. So one of our concerns is that the location of the new station is it's kind of in the wrong place. It's very awkward to get to, awkward to get into, and to get out of. Because that's another important aspect of us is, as volunteers, in which there are 68 of us, we need to get to the station as quickly as we can, to get our gear on, to get into the truck and respond to a call. For those of you who've traveled that intersection up there at Jocelyn and Toronto Road, it's quite a complicated intersection with the lights that are always, they run independent. They've got sensors in the asphalt that are waiting if somebody shows up. Oh, you're here now, I'll give you an advanced screen. Nope, you wait for these other people, as compared to just a regularly timed set of lights that you have down at the Winchester. So that provides a bit of a challenge for firefighters to get to the new station. Now, for us to get out, that works okay because we've got little lights that blink on the top that will override the traffic lights and allow us to get through them. But it's still a long run from way up there to get all the way downtown and to get to the nursing homes, et cetera, that are on the east side of town. So these are the kinds of things that three of us on the fire department have responded as through the chain of command that we're supposed to do. We provided comments on these studies that went somewhere. And one of our concerns is that they probably didn't go high enough within the operation to really be read and internalized and digested and accepted for the kind of real facts and the guys that are having to respond to drive the red trucks to get to the scenes.
How many comments appear from firefighters and from yourself in that report, Glenn?
They tacked them on the back.
How many are there?
There's three.
There's three.
Yeah.
And how many firefighters did you say there were?
We have 68 volunteers.
And none of them could be bothered filling in any sort of, none of them cared enough about their own, whatever they did. In other words, am I supposed to believe, or any of us supposed to believe, that there wasn't something else going on here that said, we really don't want to hear from the most important people involved, that being the firefighters. I, for one thing, in one of the studies, I have a map of where every firefighter lives in Ward 1 and except for some northern parts of Ward 2. And I look at those dots on that map, and the firefighters who live east of the river are red dots on that map. They are the preponderance, more than half, live on the east side of the river. The blue dots, who work out of Welcome, many of them live on the west side of the river. But in the report, it says that the majority of firefighters live on the west side of the river. That's not my understanding. Why would they say that? What are they trying to convince us of? Is that another cart before the horse reason to move everything up to the far northwest corner of the town? That's the way I read it.
Subject to interpretation.
I don't think they've been brutally honest with us by any stretch of the imagination.